As Republicans move full steam ahead with their conservative policy agenda, the Democratic Party is struggling to keep up, to develop an agenda and a counteroffensive of its own. The party's approval ratings are at a record low 29%. And while Republican ratings aren't much better, well, they are the party in power. What must Democrats do to get things back on track, Anirban?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And, to answer that question, like when somebody is murdered, like the Democratic Party had been in the polls, you do an autopsy. And what the autopsy shows is very interesting. One is that the working class voters have been abandoning the party in record numbers, right? So you were a party of labor, but you're beholden to billionaires just as much as the Republican Party you critique. And people see through that often. Second, what is very, very interesting to see that among white voters, the swing was almost nothing between 2016 and 2024. White voters voted as they did. The problem starts, for the Democrats, is that among Black, Hispanic, and Asian voters, there is a remarkable erosion, right? Among moderate Hispanic voters, there's a 23% erosion. Among conservative Black voters, there was about an 8% drop. And among Asians, there was an 11% drop among moderates. To add to that, immigrants, naturalized citizens, have a plus 27 during Biden, but had a plus 1 for Trump, right? So these trends, along with a very interesting trend, that this is the first time we saw that older voters voted more for Harris, and younger voters, 20 to 25, especially men,
by a big number.
By huge 20% margins, they were voting for Trump. And this is also a broader global trend, right, that America is seeing. So if you we have to make these two trends different. One is a domestic trend that's unique to US, another is a broader global trend in which US is caught up. So to answer your question is that, stop the regressive aspects of identity politics, I would say, and focus on class, because it is clear that that voters trust the Republican Party on questions on border security, immigration, and so on, and they think about cost of living and inflation way more than these topics. So Republicans have that 15% trust margin on things that are relevant to voters now.
And to your opening remarks, I find it striking that when you look particularly at Black males, 1 out of every 5 Black males voted for Trump. Half of Latino males voted for Trump. And your point about this being not so much about identity, but more so about just bread and butter issues seems to explain that, right?
I think what's going to happen is, I think it's clear that Trump's policies are going to start affecting Trump supporters, and in a negative way. And so whether it's the tariffs or other policies dismantling parts of the federal government that are popular. So I think, moving toward 2026, what the Democrats have to do is they have to document where those policies or how those policies are affecting those middle ground, and then, and this is the tough part, convince them that it's the Republicans that are to blame. That's why I think Schumer was right in not setting themselves up as the party of shutting down the government. I know that was very unpopular, but I think they need to isolate the impact of the Republican policies on Republican votes.
Yeah, but Rick, is that going to be enough to simply say why you should not vote for Republicans as opposed to...
If you're a farmer and you can't sell your goods anymore because of the tariffs, I think it comes down to pocketbook issues, and they're
But don't Democrats have to offer an agenda for here is what we can do for you?
And they failed to do that in the last election. They made it all about Trump and democracy. So, but I know, look, I agree with you that there are going to be harms. The question for me is whether the Democratic Party is capable of uniting around some compelling message. I agree with Anirban that the message cannot be any more about cultural issues and identity politics. It doesn't work. It's got to be related to economic, it's got to be related to pocketbook, class, however you want to spin it. I don't know what that message is going to be or has to be. I do know that I won't be surprised if the Democrats screw it up, even if what Rick says is true.
I think there's a messenger problem as well, right? There, at the moment, there really isn't a clear standard bearer. And this is always a challenge when Congress has multiple voices, right? The presidency has one voice. And so it makes it challenging for the news media. Then when they report on Trump and the administration, and then they'll pick up a smattering of Democrats and all have different perspectives.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the question. Is AOC going to challenge Schumer? Will there be a New York primary, for example? Is she or somebody else going to really step up as the voice of the disaffected Democrats who don't feel that Schumer really is articulating a message that resonates? He isn't articulating a message that resonates with the base or even with others, I think, who would be interested in the Democrats if they could sell a message. He can't sell the message anymore.
Yeah, but will AOC be able to do that?
No.
The CNN survey,
Absolutely
the CNN survey
not.
that I mentioned, she was at the top. She had 10% more than any other Democratic leader, and you say absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's fine for her and Bernie Sanders to go out and rail against but there is no way.
See, this is where I very much and vehemently disagree, right? The Democrats keep attacking the left and they want their left's votes.
Right.
What you can consistently see that Bernie Sanders polls excellently among many, many Republican voters, many Republican moderates and even conservatives. So this is kind of a knee-jerk anti-left reaction that I see across the media. And I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I vehemently oppose it. We need a very strong left that talks about working class Americans, that talks about their pocketbook, and stop this identity politics malarkey.
Well, but that's
Republicans
what
agree with you
AOC does.
greatly, I can tell you that, because that will guarantee that they
do not
don't
attack
do
Bernie
well.
Sanders. They do not ever
Well,
do
it's
that.
Bernie
There's a reason for
Sanders,
that.
right, versus
AOC
his
are very
message
different.
of focusing on kitchen table issues, whereas
That's
AOC
right.
is way over there.
Joe
to the
Rogan
left.
used to be a big Bernie Sanders person, so
was.
you're definitely correct in that, but
Yes.
it's a very fine line, and AOC is not a substitute for Bernie Sanders.
Okay, well, at least we agree on that, right?